cold one today. Frost on the roof. But hey, got another A. So I was thinking yesterday about the AI influencers, and there's definitely some chatter about the role of technology in the world, and specifically when it comes to social media and things. I saw one person making the point that having AI models is actually better because the modeling industry is exploitative and ends up harming these young women. If you have a software do it, then no physical people are harmed. And that's an interesting take on it, but that's actually not my main concern. My main concern is when they roll out the AI companions. And I'm sure if it hasn't been done already, it's not far, because the language generation abilities are progressing so quickly. We have a growing issue with shut-ins. Japan is the most famous case, where people just withdraw from society. They live in their rooms, they're on video games, and they're not working, they're not in school, they're not in training, they're NEET. What happens to people who have that predisposition anyway, and they get AI companionship? So there's even less incentive to go out into the world and interact with human beings. There's a voluntary aspect to that, and then I think we might even see a nefarious aspect to that, where you have all these people saying that, oh, human population should be 500 million or less, and a good way to do that is to make sure people don't reproduce. So you have countries where the fertility rate is below the amount needed to replace the current population, and so those countries, if they continue on that trend, their population will start to decrease. We've already started to see this in China, where they actually maxed out on their population a couple of years ago, and now it's ticking down because of their one-child policy. So that was an artificial limit to population growth imposed by the government on the people. A lot of societies, as they get wealthier, have that same kind of dynamic just naturally. I remember I used to work with a lot of Korean immigrants. I worked for a company owned by Korean immigrants. I remember one of them, this was a middle-aged woman, telling me she had a son, and it was so expensive to raise a child in South Korea that she resented it a lot and only had the one. I don't know, obviously, all the details as to what went into the decision to only have one child as opposed to multiple, but there was definitely cognizant decision-making involved in all that. We have the people who, either through temperament or through economic circumstances or what have you, whether the motivations are internal or external, there's going to be a lot less babies born. And I think that is going to be a major issue. Even if you just look at it on the purely financial side of things, the modern financial world only works with growth. So if the money supply stops growing and if the people working stops growing, then it all falls apart. So that is an issue that all these societies are going to have to grapple with in the coming years. Here in America, Social Security was implemented as a pay-as-you-go system. That means that you pay in Social Security through payroll taxes, and that money is not saved for you. It just goes into what they call the trust fund, and then it gets paid out to the people who are currently receiving Social Security. And there was a little startup period back between like 1937 and 1939. Since then, which is all of us, that has been the way it works. And the so-called trust fund, as well, it's Congress, so it's not like they left the money there. There were many years, decades, where the amount coming in from the growing population that was working was supporting a smaller population that was retiring and receiving Social Security benefits. That flipped many years ago, and people discovered that, oh, the money that was in that trust fund account was actually borrowed by Congress to spend on everything else. And the Congresses, they wrote an IOU and you're going to pay it back and all that kind of stuff. So for the past, decade plus, the benefits that have been paid out for Social Security have been coming from those IOUs because the incoming payroll tax has not been enough to support the current retirees. The Social Security Administration, they release reports every year saying that, oh, based on current projections, we are going to just be out of money in I think the last one was 2033 or something like that. Soon. That's the main thing to keep in mind, soon. There are provisions in the law that will automatically cut benefits if and when that happens, but it's a problem. And the US is actually, in demographic terms, in a better situation than a lot of these other countries, because the internal fertility rate is lowering, along with Japan and Korea and the UK and other places like that are similar kind of economic frameworks. But the US has so much in-migration that it makes up for the fact that the Americans are not having sufficient babies to replace the population. We have a little bit more leeway than a lot of other countries, but as people have more options, really, to simulate companionship, which is a basic human need, without having to go through the work of figuring out how to interact with people, then that problem is just going to be exacerbated. That's what's on my mind this morning, and it's cold, so I'm going inside.